if this episode is dropping the day that I hope that it is the premiere of DIDI. DIDI in Chinese. DIDI in American. It is no, let me just pull it up. In 2008, during the last month of summer before high school begins, an impressionable 13-year-old Taiwanese American boy learns what his family can't teach him: how to skate, how to flirt, and how to love his mom. I love me a rule of 3 with the third one being the subversion, am I right? And how to love his mom. Okay, I got to see this movie because I got to go to the premiere. The movie is amazing, okay? I think it's one of my favorites in the year 2024. And yeah, it's catered for me. It's about a Taiwanese American, well, I'm Chinese American. Controversial! The mother-son relationship, immigrant mother, first generation American son angle was finding first love, the cringiness factor. There's MySpace, there's AIM, which I just found out people called it AIM and not just AIM. But it perfectly encapsulates 2008 in a way that we don't really see that much. Most coming of age movies are either in the present or in the far past, but not the actual time when we were young. And this hits it so hard. For what I've heard people say, it's I related to that movie. I related so hard in a way that even I'm embarrassed about. This movie is funny, it is heartfelt, and it has taken the film scene by storm. It won the Drama Audience Award, I think, in Sundance. It had a really successful initial premiere in LA, in New York, and other cities that it's expanded to. And now across the entire country, people are going to be able to watch it in the theater. And I am so excited to be bringing in one of my best friends, Shirley Chen, who is in this movie. She is a, dare I say, lead in the movie? She is the sister of our main character. And when I tell you she reminded me so much of my sister, emo ass, side-bane ass, mean ass, older sister, bully. Just kidding, Laura, love you. In terms of what I've been watching, it's The Boyfriend on Netflix, DIDI. But what other movie did I like recently? It doesn't matter. We're talking about DIDI and we're talking about Shirley Chen, okay? Shirley Chen is a lightning force. For all my 5 friends watching this, if you don't know Shirley Chen's talent, go to the movie theater or go home. Also, side note, the mom is played by Joan Chen, legend, okay? Also, a funny side note, my mom auditioned for this film for this role, and I'm pretty sure it was between her and Joan Chen. I'm just gonna say that, okay? Did she get a callback? No. Did she get an in-person audition? No. She submitted the tape though, and I submitted her stats, and they immediately asked for a tape because you know that they're looking for Asian woman in this industry. And then they're gonna give it to Joan Chen, which makes sense. Shirley Chen is an actor primarily, but she also is a writer and designer and just multimedia creative. She is the definition of an artist. She started acting when she was 10 years old, moving from Washington State to Los Angeles with her mom, basically just to chase the dream of becoming a successful actor. So she kind of did the acting before the whole Crazy Rich Asians 2018 wave, okay? She's been at it for a long time, and I really respect her and her career and her journey. And in this episode, some of my favorite parts are how she talks about the fallacy and the myth of immediate success and having hope and expectations attached to it. 2, really understanding what drives her in being an artist and being a creative as a career because it's hard. 3, why her year out of college and a little after was so fucking hard. And I love talking about how hard it is being 23, 24, 25, what have you. And I hope that this is of purpose for you too, because Shirley Chen is a fount of knowledge. She's like a philosophical goddess, okay? I like to think of her as my little sister, but she's a wise woman, and I respect her for her art. I know she's gonna win that Oscar if she so chooses to continue this career path. And yeah, let's just get into it. This is No So True with Shirley Chen. Ah!
Today, we're recording this on August 6th, okay? Yeah. Which means that DIDI comes out, like, everywhere, in 10 days?
Today's the 6th, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 days.
Okay, so how are we feeling about, is this your first, like, big theatrical release?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, where are we? Where are you feeling about that?
I don't know, it definitely doesn't feel, like, real, which I think is super cheesy to say, but... You know, as you know, like, so the first movie I did, Beast, which was at Sundance 2020, like, you know, we did that, and I remember thinking, like, oh, this was my moment, because, you know, there were, like, just a lot of conversations, a lot of people reaching out to talk to me, and agencies and stuff like that, but because of the pandemic, like, everything just kind of, like, went under, basically, right? And so I feel like I went into this process just expecting less than nothing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, every step of the way, I've been saying it's just been such an extra gift. So the fact that it's, like, having a theatrical release, it feels really weird. But I remember, I think, the day that it was announced that we got bought by Focus, I remember I was just sitting on my staircase at home, and I just started crying. Because I was like...
Really?
Because it was so weird. It was like... oh my gosh, this is my dream. Like, this has been my dream for so long. And in that moment, I finally realized that and remembered.
Yeah.
I think especially because the first year after being graduated was so hard, that was the first time I was like, this in no way was how I expected this to happen, but it's totally been a dream of mine since I was a kid, like, to be able to be in the theaters and have, like, people see that. So it's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shirley, I'm so excited for you. Yeah, because for as long as I've known you, which is since college, you've always been like the actor, like the child actor. And I feel like I and so many of us always saw this for you, like being in theaters. And, you know, I still have absolutely no qualms saying that I really think that you're going to get the Oscar if that's what you want. But, like, could you tell me more than about, like, that day that you found out?
Yeah, I mean... Well, I think I just remember being at home because it had been a few days after Sundance, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know, leading up to that, so I graduated last December or
2 Decembers
ago.
So like a year and a half.
A year and a half ago, and like that first year being graduated was really, really tough for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody can prepare you for the transition out of college. And I know, I'm sure you know, because you graduated in the pandemic.
Talk all about this.
Yeah.
For sure.
But it was really, really brutal for me. It sucked. And
why?
I mean, I don't really think, I honestly never had a plan for after college. I always just thought things would just happen. Like, you know, I just graduated, and my only plan was like, oh, I'm going to tutor on the side, and then I'm going to act. And I just never thought about what really that looked like to build a life outside of school, because... For me, I realized, you know, retroactively that, like, that was the first time that, like, it felt like two of my core identities, like, being a student and being an actor were suddenly, like, called into question. Because, like, you know, you're a student basically your whole life.
Yeah.
And I feel like you and I probably can both relate to, like, being a student and being good at being a student being, like, such a core part of who you are.
Definitely.
And, like, a metric of, like, your worth and the ways that other people view you and the way that your parents view you and, like, assess you and make you kind of look to that as a reflection of who you are and how you're making them proud, basically, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that one metric that was always, like, a safety net for me was suddenly out the window, just kind of disappeared. And I also didn't expect, like, how graduating off cycle would affect me, right? Because it feels, like, extra alone. Because I think already at that age, you're, like, realizing, like, oh, we're all kind of alone in this world. But, like, extra, it felt that way because there weren't really friends that were like, oh, I'm also experiencing these feelings I've never felt before. And, like, asking these questions about who I am and what I want to do in ways that I haven't before. So That was really weird. And then also, talks of the strike started happening in March. So I had maybe gotten like 4 auditions in. 4 or 5 auditions in before the strike happened.
Yeah.
And even with DIDI, for example, like I think I went in for my first audition in March.
Yeah.
Around then, and then I had my callback around then too on Zoom with Isaac. Isaac was one of the callbacks I had. And then it's kind of just like, we don't know what's going on with it for a little bit, right? And then I got to do the Sundance Lab for it in June, and that was super special.
I remember that.
Yeah. I remember just hearing that news and just feeling so relieved, like, oh, finally. Because, I was like, for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. And like,
I feel that. It's literally so true. Am I right? No, so true. Like, what Shirley is getting at, I feel like, is exactly what everyone that I know who graduated from college and we were all going through it together was going through. But like, I was so shocked at how little we were really just talking about it, except for the people who we were closest with, like our best friends. It was honestly so relieving to hear some people be like, oh my God, like I literally feel like I'm spiraling, or I have no idea what I'm doing, or honestly, I'm pretty like anxious and pretty fucking depressed. Like, not to just, encourage that, obviously, but some level of commiseration, I feel like, was just like validating when I felt like I was going through like an existential quarter life crisis and feeling like I'm literally not who I thought I was, and like not being able to sleep, having to get back onto meds. My physical health was deteriorating, like banging my head against a wall, literally. I was just like, I must be the only one. But it's such a lonely space to be in. But every time I kind of got a little glimpse, like even at a party, you're talking with friends, just being like, yeah, I'm fucking doing like not great. Like that, I feel like we just need to normalize that. Quite literally every young person I know at this juncture has struggled, but has felt kind of like weird or embarrassed to share that, because I think that at least what it was for me is like doing so or signifying that you have no idea what you're talking about is just like externalizing how stuck you are and how you're not advancing and how you're not thriving like how you want to maybe portray, because it's just the antithesis of what we're told our 20s should look like, which is that we should have it figured out and it should be fun too, and we are adults and we're doing it, and this should be the best time of your lives. Like, so yeah, and honestly can totally relate to what she's talking about with not knowing what you're gonna do tomorrow. Initially, this was fun. The first era before, like Omicron, summer of 2021, was just like, oh my God, like now we can go live. I don't know. I don't have a job. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know what the day after looks like. I'm gonna go have fun. I'm gonna go be in the city and be with friends. That gets old, not knowing what you're doing the day after tomorrow, not having some kind of structure in your life or some kind of grounding of like, this is what I'm showing up for. This is what I'm waking up for. I've literally taken a whole ass job teaching in person just so that I could A, be around people, and B, have structure in my life, and C, have obligation that also necessitated some level of purpose. And did I get all of those? Yes. That helped me get back on track and back on my feet so quickly, and it felt good. But yeah, when you're like 20, 19, 18 years, kind of like, let me just go frolic and la-di-da, which is cool until it's not.
I saw this Instagram post recently that someone was like, being in your 20s is like remembering how to do basic things again. Like remembering that it's important to have a bedtime, and remembering that you like need to eat 3 meals a day, like stuff like that.
And you have to be the one to tell yourself to do it and parent yourself through it. Yeah,
exactly. It sounds so silly saying it out loud, but it's really true. Like you have to remember like how to be a person again.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to relearn, like what you're saying, like because you have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the lab was the first thing that I was like, oh, this is so great and this is so special. And working with Sean was so great. And then, then we filmed it. And I kind of forgot what the root of this question why the first year was so hard.
Why was it hard? Yeah.
I was also like, in a bad relationship. And like, I was moving. I think, couch surfing and living in different places like every month at least.
I remember
If not
that.
every like 2 or 3 weeks, just bouncing between places.
So unstable and like there's something so sexy about that.
It seems sexy, but actually in real life you're like, oh my god, this is hell. It was like New York, hot. It was
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So I feel like when we talked about this, it just felt like with the pandemic and everything, there's been so many times where it felt like it's like, this is the moment and now things are finally going to click. But also, I feel like it's also important to note that you've been doing this for so long.
Yeah.
You know, it's like does it feel like you've had a lot of times where it's been like, oh, then there's this, then there's this, and there's this? Or was it always like, there will be this one thing that'll be like make or break and it's just like going until then?
I feel like there is that idea of the latter of like, oh, there is this one thing that's gonna make or break. But like the more I'm in it and the more you realize like, oh, it's all these little steps along the way that then eventually become this larger thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I was even thinking about this with this past month and like the DIDI premiere, like, you know, the first movie that I did, it was the first feature, the first lead, first romantic lead, first time at Sundance, all this stuff. It was called Beast.
Okay.
And, like, I thought that was the moment because I started when I was 10.
Yeah.
And I moved to LA around that time with my mom. And, like, so it felt like at least that was probably at least, I guess, 10 years of doing it, right?
Wow.
Which was like my first big thing, quote unquote, right? And the first thing where like, you know, press was picking up on it and writing all these wonderful things, and UR had like really great things to say about me and all that stuff. And then it was released during the pandemic, and so like the wide release for it kind of just went out the window basically, right? Like we did it ourselves, but it was like drive-in movies, and it was so early into the pandemic that there weren't really like actual solutions for that, you know?
Yeah.
And then when I did Quiz Lady on Hulu, like
Young
that was
Sandra
Young Sandra Oh, that was so much fun, right? But then that was released during the strike. And so that was like such a weird thing. And then just now, DIDI, the premiere, like it just happened a few weeks ago.
Yes, which
and
was
then,
so fun.
So Eric went instead of me because I was stuck at the airport because of CrowdStrike.
Right.
So it's like every step
for another movie that you're
yeah.
also going to be in, which is also super fucking exciting.
Yeah, so
which we're also going to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all these things where like, I don't know. I feel like I don't know what the lessons are that I'm learning necessarily. More just like you keep working really hard, and then some stroke of luck will happen, and then some missteps will happen too, but like both of those are sort of like par for course.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But it's like everything that you did kind of helped you get to that next thing in some like weird way. Yeah, y'all, I feel like Shirley is a perfect example of this because you could look at someone as young as her. She's like 24. I think she just turned 24. 24. And you could just be like, she's so young and she got into her movie. Like, that's awesome. That's what past me would have thought, like college me. Not only would that have been me, I also would have been like, oh, if she can do it, that means that I can do it. Totally negating her prior years of experience in hustling. But something that I'm really trying to acquaint myself with is like, just show up and do your part and do what's in your control. Because like, there is no such thing as that. Okay. Actually, no. There is such a thing as the overnight success story. But there even in those situations, it's not like you fucking make a song and then the day after it blows up. You have other things all preceding before, but it's just that like peak moment that I don't know what sound that was. That moment that we really just like highlight way too much, or we over index. We literally thought that she was gonna like become famous the next day when this whole Sundance news came out, and then that kind of didn't happen. But if you can find it in yourself to keep showing up, to keep doing the work, then it's like, what's the stupid saying? Like, success happens to when people, you know, why can't I think of that? Okay, hold up. Hey Siri. When preparation meets opportunity. I can't fucking believe that I didn't know that. I just kept thinking about Charlie XCX's career.
Oh my gosh,
and
yeah.
Like,
14 at the raves.
Yeah.
Literally.
And just like, but I feel like there is a little bit of that or flavor going on where it's like, yeah, I could imagine, because I still remember when you found out that Beast was going to Sundance.
Yeah.
And we all thought it was going to be like, and there were some jealous bitches too, but we all thought that you were like, oh my God, like this is literally going to like I don't know, explode her career. And it just felt like there were some of these hindrances or like blockades that were just like, we're going against everyone, not just you, but it felt like, I would imagine, in your position, like, why can't it just be now? Or why can't it just be this thing?
Yeah.
But bringing that then into like DIDI, like, maybe it's a really great scenario then that you kind of don't have these expectations or everything's kind of like the cherry on top kind of thing. Question mark?
It is. I mean, I think with DIDI, it definitely gives me a lot of hope, but also like, I think it gives a lot of people hope, like from start to finish, and like by start, I mean like pre even filming, like starting with the lab, and then for Sean, like years and years earlier, but it has been a process that's been filled with so many really beautiful people who just love what they do and have so much fun doing it. And like, I think it was so special to get to work with so many people who it was their first time acting, and like and being on set and like having, you know, some of the actors like parents being like, oh, what's a Coogan account, and like having like listening to their conversations of setting that up, like was just so cool, because I think it brings it back to like that purity and that simplicity of why we all got into this and why we do what we do.
Which is what for you?
I think for me, it's always been because I like playing with other people, like having fun, and I think connecting with other people. I used to call it like lightning mode or like Zen state or something like that.
Like flow.
It used to just feel like that way to me, because I went to a performing arts high school, the same one that Isaac, who plays the lead in DIDI, is going to now, and like my favorite part was always just getting like the camaraderie and like getting to play and be silly and try new things and like discovering new things in those moments. And then I think that is the spirit that you have to preserve as you get older, when the world is kind of
so not that.
World is so not that, and it's like pressuring you to be so hard and so, you know, unprecious with things. Like because even with like what I'm saying about like all of these like misfires to like stop and start versions of my career, like it kind of teaches you to be hard and have this like hard shell and jaded perspective when you really need to preserve that preciousness. Like it almost punishes you. I feel like the world punishes you for wanting to be precious with your art or wanting to be precious with memories or experiences, because as soon as you are, like something attacks it. You know what I mean? Something unexpected just happens, and you're like, well, why did I even invest in this? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that's like just a lesson of life and like a lesson of making art, is like keeping that pureness and that joy and that spontaneity and all those things that make a kid amidst like all the hardness. And I've been
being an older person,
and I've been saying that a lot too, because I think someone had asked me like what advice I would give like a person who wants to start acting. And for me, I was just saying, it's like remembering that you want to keep that levity and that joy and that curiosity alive, and keeping that soft while the world makes you harder, and that constant balance of both is, I think, what makes a good artist. And I think when I got to watch Sandra, that is like the biggest thing that I've noticed about her, is like she carries this for as long as she's done it. I obviously got to work with her, and I got to observe her then for my character as well. But, you know, I got to see her do a reading of Stop Kiss at the Public in May, I think. And that was really great too, because, I mean, it's my favorite play, but like when she's performing, just has this spirit, like this liveliness. She's so alive, and like it really looks like she's just having fun. Like it could be the most dramatic scene and she's just still having fun. And I think that the longer you're in it, you can feel that with people. You know, like if they're really just having fun and amidst all the hardships or whatever that they've had, if they're still able to hold on to that truth and that play, like that to me is what makes a really inspiring artist.
Yeah, because I feel like from the outside looking in, there's kind of that idea that a lot of people become actors because they want to like show off the dramatic side or the sadness or the whatever, which is also true. But I think it's so cool to hear then that, you know, for such a veteran like Sandra Oh, it's like sitting here and watching her do her job really well, but like, you know, she's having fun even when it's not necessarily a fun scene or a fun character. Like, I do feel like that's what makes you want to keep watching someone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, and kind of going back to what you're saying, like, oh, the Charlie of it all, like these like people who started so young, and I think, I mean, now it's like really her summer, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But there's been so many of these, like, even looking back at it, I talk with like Esteban about like, wait, she actually did have like a not cool era. Like some of her stuff was not that cool, but like, who cares? For all of you guys wondering who don't know me like that, Esteban is my boyfriend. And maybe I'll have him on the show if we don't break up.
And it's so funny because I was listening to her talking about that on the Las Culturistas
podcast
when she came on, and she was talking about Olivia and Sour and how like she's like, oh my gosh, like at her age she really has such a voice that I don't feel like I had.
Right.
And I really think it took those years of like really discovering herself.
Exactly.
While she was still producing stuff. And lately, I think when I was in my trailer for Slanted, which I was just filming, I kind of had this wall of things that I needed to keep around me to remind myself while I'm doing this. And one of them was were two photos of Chapel Roan.
Whoa, okay, Gen Z queen.
Literally Gen Z.
Yeah.
I don't remember where it was, but it was some like YouTube performance that she had, which is Kaylee Rose.
Oh shit, that's her real name?
Yeah, you didn't even know that?
I know I heard her real name. I didn't know that it was Kaylee Rose.
I'm pretty sure it's Kaylee Rose, and it's spelled the way that you would think like a white girl from the Midwest would spell it, which is like with a GH. You know? Like an IGH. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I could be wrong, but yeah. And it was like a photo of her at her little like electronic keyboard.
And it's like just her.
And then a photo of her on the Jimmy Fallon show with like her whole like her little nail clap.
Yeah.
And like
that was insane, by the way, that fucking interview. Yeah. We were talking, we were like, is she like Latina now? Anyways, doesn't matter.
That's so funny.
But you had her in your trailer.
Yeah, I had those photos in my trailer because, I mean, it felt really important to me to have both. Like
yes.
Both this, because she talks a lot about. I mean, she talks a lot about how she got signed by Atlantic and then dropped, and then was like, I might quit. And I don't know. I think you see her and the artist that she's become is a direct result of having to be like, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna do what I want. Definitely. Like if I'm gonna if people are gonna criticize me or like not be behind me anyway, like I might as well just like go hard and go down trying, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so is that what you feel like is happening now? Like,
myself?
Yeah, because now you're honestly, this is probably the most kind of external validation you've gotten in this profession to date, would you say? Like, where do you feel with that in terms of how you see your career, like, in this trajectory? Where do you think you are in this like longer journey?
I have no clue.
Yeah.
I actually literally have no clue, and I've kind of gotten to a point where I've stopped mapping it out.
Cool.
Because, you know, the first time I went to Sundance, I was like, okay, yeah, like this is it. Like I've been working so hard and I'm finally ready. And again, like that's what to me was so inspiring about like Chapel's stories. She was like, when she got signed by Atlantic, thought that was her moment, right? And then, like, looking back on it retroactively, she was like, oh, I wouldn't have been ready for any of this if this had come at that stage in my life. That's kind of how I feel, too. Where, like, you know, looking back, I mean, honestly, it's so impossible because, like, to imagine a life where the pandemic didn't happen is, like, I really don't want to try to do that. But, you know, like, I have no clue.
Yeah.
I literally have no clue. All I know is I'm so fortunate that I've gotten to work with some really great Asian and Asian American actresses who
like the biggest one, Joan Chen, Sandra Oh, like people that you're related to in these and are stories. In these stories.
And and Vivian Wu and Joan and Vivian worked together on The Last Emperor, and like I think that is so special to me. Like they've had I want to say like a 40-year relationship.
For sure.
Decades-long friendship and careers together that they've built. And actually, it's funny because my cousin in China messaged my mom on WeChat and was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like Shirley has gotten to work with, you know, the empresses.
Probably the biggest, from an American standpoint, the biggest Chinese actresses. Question mark? Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
You know, save for, I mean, I think there's so many. There's just truly so many. But, like, I guess what I mean to say, like, when I, for example, couldn't make the premiere because of CrowdStrike, Vivian was like, you know, something similar happened to me when I was nominated for this really prestigious Italian award in my 20s, like, blah, blah, blah. And she went on this long story and told me about it. And I just think that all of these steps along the way has given me this perspective where I'm just grateful for whatever happens. And I think for me, in terms of, where I see my career or why I mentioned chapel is because it's like, you really just have to figure out ways to make this fun for yourself. Yeah. Because if you're in it for the long haul, like, there's going to be so many times when it's not fun. Yeah. And so I think for me, I always try to hold on to, like, what about these experiences are fun for me? And I always want to bring that wherever I go because it's so rare that these things line up. And I think that that's what this has given me. Like, I don't think I take for granted when I book projects because I understand how rare those come, and I hope I never lose that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
whereas before maybe you did a little bit more, you think?
No. I just think that I don't know what perspective that would have given me, right? But I guess, I mean, in terms of, like, critics talking about it or whatever, like, you know, there were a lot of positive things that people were saying back in 2020. And a lot of things people were saying about DIDI now as well. Right. But I think, you know, it's training that muscle of, like, no matter what other people say, I still enjoy who I am and I can still live with myself. And, like, that's the most important thing, you know?
I'm proud of you, Shirley. I feel like you've grown a lot.
So,
like, yeah. I like to say that we're, like, you know, like siblings, like, but, like, really I feel like I'm sitting across, like, a new, like, Shirley, you know, like an adult Shirley, even though you play a high schooler. And before we get more into, like, the actual process of DIDI, do you feel like, because you were talking about how this past year has been really hard, and we've had kind of conversations throughout, when you, now that you are where you are, and things are still hard, you know, like, do you feel like, looking back at the past year, that it was kind of that in terms of this profession has a lot of ups and downs? And I ask this because there were kind of times where you're like looking at other jobs, like, is this even what I want to do? In
this moment, I feel like it's like,
did it feel kind of like a smaller hump, or did it seem like something that did steer you, like, a different direction?
This past year.
Yeah.
I mean, I really had a huge identity crisis because, you know, and I've always wanted to act. I recently found this little, like, one of those, like, arts and crafts assignment you have as a kid. And it was, like, one of those foldable things. And you had to, like, map out your life. And I'd made it in middle school right when I'd moved to LA about my time growing up and all this stuff. And it had talked about my first time doing a commercial and, like, you know, a goal that I'd written was, like, I want to be a famous actress. I don't know if I would ever say that now. Like, I would never use, first of all, I would never use the adjective famous. I would not do that now, you know? In middle school, that's, like, what I thought it was. But it was really hard that first year because I was like, wow, maybe I really am okay with letting go of this part of myself that's been the biggest part of myself. And that was so absurd. And I felt so, like, alone and singular in that question because it was so embarrassing to tell other people, like, I'm really seriously having doubts about this career. Right. Because, again, it was this strike. It was like, I feel like to contextualize it, it's my first year being graduated. I was living in a new city for the first time. I was in this relationship that, you know, made me feel so bad about myself.
Because he just kind of sucked, right?
Really, really sucked. But, you know, less about that.
Less about, this isn't about him, it's about you.
But more, you know, like, not living with people constantly where, like, I think also a lot of people remember me and know me as somebody who's super social and loves being around people. And that was the first time in my life where I was like, I don't even know how to be around people anymore. Like, I don't remember. It was so strange. And, like, it was really weird. It's really weird the way that I think our minds can, like, spin these webs about, especially when you're, like, in this state of
vulnerability
and like you know, it feels like you're like on a boat that's rocking in the ocean. You're like, what is going on? And I think I described it to you at the time of like, I felt like I was falling out of a plane and I had a parachute, but I was so scared that I was falling out of the plane that I couldn't I couldn't open the parachute, and like everybody's telling me like, did you have a parachute? Like, just open it, and I was so frozen that like I couldn't. And I think that's what it feels like to have like a period of like really intense anxiety.
Vigilance. And,
just like super confused about the world. And yeah, again, because the strike was just like, is this possible at all? You know, and so to answer your question about like, you know, where I am at the other side of it now, and does it feel like I made the right choice? Like, I can say I feel like I made the choice for right now that feels right, which is that, you know, like, I think for me it was really important to have a day job, just because it's not something that people talk a lot about, but like I need to have something that feels like I'm learning something outside of acting, that feels structured, feels like I have a reason to just get up and get dressed and like to just do things and learn things. Yeah, just a routine is super important.
Wake up to and
Exactly. And so having that has been really great. I think finally feeling like I have a community where I'm living is really great in New York. That's not just people that we went to school with, but like new people and being now a year out from that relationship and like starting to date again and like I don't know, I'm in a much better and now having a job where like it's giving me enough flexibility to do something like this and work on a short right now after working on a feature. Like I think I'm in a much better place. So but is it like career wise long term the right thing? Like I don't know, I really don't know, but I feel more settled than I did a year ago, which is really nice.
I don't think she would have said that a few years ago. Like the Shirley Chen that I knew years ago, she and all of us just knew like it's just like what she said in her arts and craft. Like, I am going to be a famous actress. And what I love about her trajectory is that like where she was able to ultimately kind of achieve more success or get closer to where she wanted to be was when after she basically blew it all up and just kind of said like fuck it and took not like the stakes away from it because it was still high stakes, but allowed herself to even understand or conceptualize an identity beyond that singular goal. And I feel like from what I'm engaging, from what she's saying, it's like once she was able to in some ways let it go and circumstantially other things working out more in her favor, like she was able to put away the expectation or put away the need, the requirement that she was going to make it and just like kind of do it just to do it. Hearing her say, do I think this is going to be my forever thing is, or maybe not, like is so refreshing because I think when we're in our 20s, even if we're not expected to know what we're going to do, we're expected to aim high and to commit to that decision or commit to that desire or that dream, especially if it's something as volatile and non-traditional as art or acting. Like, oh, if you want to be an actor, you better fucking want to be an actor for the rest of your life. And if you're not pursuing it and if you're not successful or attaching yourself to the starving artist mentality, if you're not successful, then like, who are you? What are you doing? Get the fuck out of here. And I think there's something really liberating about being like, you know what? This is what I want to do. This is what I love. This is what I care about. But also, like, I am capable of doing so many other things, and I'm not going to attach myself to just a singular thing and just limit myself to what I think that goal is, because that in and of itself is a little limiting too.
And I would imagine part of the disorientation is that, like, maybe not necessarily people are like, oh, Shirley's giving up, but like, wait, like people being so sure that you would make it if that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know, like we all knew you as an actor who was already successful and could get like whatever she wanted, but probably that wasn't necessarily like what you needed to hear or was the most helpful thing.
Well, it was just so scary because the strike that whole time was the first time when I was like, oh wow, I'm really not auditioning. I'm not acting, and do I miss it? Like I wasn't sure about that answer. The thing that I knew that I missed and the thing that Didi gave me was that feeling of community that I crave so much. That like that to me is the reason why I act, is like that feeling of being around other people who are like-minded and like are excited to make a project together and feel feelings and share experiences and like connect. Like to me, to me, like, the purpose of life and art is the ability to connect. Because, like, we don't know why. I mean, this gets really, like, philosophical.
Do it.
But, like, we don't know why. We don't really know why we're alive. But the thing that, to me, makes the human experience worth it is connecting with other people.
Definitely.
Making because I feel like, are biologically trained to have this thing that feels, like, empty if we're not with someone else. Where everyone's like, oh, we're designed to be social creatures, like, whatever. Which is, I just think, true. Like, and acting, I think, is one way of being able, in that moment, to connect with somebody else. And then if you put that on a screen, reaching out to an audience, and in a movie like Didi especially, right, where people can watch it and feel connected to those characters because it connects to a part of themselves.
Totally.
And that is, like, just the best feeling in the world, you know?
Yeah, and it just seems like you're so much more in tune with what it is about the profession that will, like, keep you going, even if it's not necessarily exactly how you thought it was, or even if it's not acting, like, finding that connection in ways that's important to you, which you'll probably continue to get, and it seems like was exactly what Didi was like.
Yes.
But, like, now you have that basis or that foundation in case, for whatever reason, it's not there in some project or in acting, or you don't find that.
Exactly. It was, that first year was figuring out what's the kernel.
Yeah.
The kernel of things that make me happy. And for a while, I've just felt really unhappy because I didn't know what that kernel was. Again, I wasn't acting. I didn't have my friends. So, like, it was like I was missing a lot of those pieces that have made me feel whole for so long.
I fucking love finding the kernel. Find that kernel. Find that acorn, squirrels. Okay? What is the reason behind the reason? What is the why behind the why behind the why behind the why behind the why of, like, in one word? For me, connection is huge. For me, authenticity is huge. And, like, for me, I didn't really realize that at my core, like, that's why I do everything that I do, more or less. And if something isn't really, like, checking that box, then that's not for me. And that's okay.
I feel like growing up as a kid acting, you feel like the reason why you're acting is you're not aware of it, but it's like because you want to feel special.
Totally.
And it was really, really hard for me to separate that from acting because you're not always going to feel special when you're acting. And if that's the thing that makes you want to act, it's super unsustainable.
Yeah.
Like, it just, because when it doesn't feel that way, it really hurts. And you're like, oh, what the director's not giving me notes, or the director, like, oh, I'm not getting these, like, comments about my performance. It's really, it doesn't help you as an actor, and it doesn't help you as a person. And so being able to realize it's connecting and getting to bring, like, these fun elements to set, like for Slanted, which, you know, I shot in July, like, getting to hang out with the crew, and, like, that to me is, like, my favorite part. Like, make, like, paper chains together and
you're a creative at heart.
Yeah.
Like, you love making things, wearing things,
yeah.
doing things with your fingers, and, like, having other people do it too. Like,
Literally bringing other people into it is, like, just what I love doing. And it was hard to rebuild that after college, because in college it's all built in, you know?
Yeah.
People who want to do that with you, the supplies to do it, the money to do it, like, all that stuff. But yeah, about Didi, that is a really unique experience where everybody was there for that same reason. You know, the crew was a lot younger and so small, and, like, they had worked together on previous projects in the Bay, like Fremont, for example. And so, like, they were all so close, and I think it just was the perfect, you know, storm of, like, all these, like, young kids who were meeting for the first time, and, like, we got to, like, basically have recess in between things and play basketball and skateboard, and then, like, make origami with each other, or we got to have, like, a talent show on set, or all this stuff that just, and everybody was so down for it. That was the thing. It was like the people were there for this to be an experience, and that was something that was so special for me, because I realized, like, for me, acting isn't just about the job. It's not about, like, doing my, like, 4 takes or whatever, or less sometimes, or more sometimes, and then, like, and then piecing out. Like, for me, it's really about, like, you're spending time with people, and it's always better for me when when it's an experience, like, when that movie is, like, it encapsulates a really special memory.
Yeah.
And I love making these really great memories with people. And I think something about growing up and what you were saying about, like, if this had happened earlier for you, I'm lucky that I have had enough projects since Beast where that standard has been met and where it hasn't, you know? Where I understand that that's not a rule. It's not a rule that everyone is there to, like, have fun. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's actually, like, pretty much the exception.
Yeah.
But, like, when you do get to have moments like that, it's really, really special. So, yeah.
I see it in the movie.
Yeah.
And just to kind of talk a little bit more like about the movie itself, I mean, I already said this to you, you're so good in it. And this is also the first time that I feel like I saw you like totally different than how you are in person. You reminded me so much of my older sister who was like emo and so mean to me. She knows that. We've talked about it. And not that I wasn't mean to her, but like I feel like you can really the main thing that people are saying about this movie is that just the relatability of it.
Yeah.
It takes the coming of age story to a T in a really, really new way. That is Asian and Southern California, you know, like skating, all these things that like seeming like they don't go together, but just like, oh my God, this felt like the first movie where the MySpace of it all and the aim of it all was just so viscerally like, oh my God, that was me. And everyone, I feel like, can relate to a character. And it's a good sign because they're all like in good ways and bad ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, I just feel like you embodied that essence and that character so well. And your character was so important to the arc of the story in terms of like it feels like everyone is going against him. And you're kind of the first exception, right?
Yeah,
like you're kind of the
that's a good
first
point.
person to make him understand that like, the beauty of connection and friendship and you're not alone and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What was it like getting into like Vivian?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, I had a lot of time with the character because I'd known about it for a little bit. And I mean, because of, you know, working on it for the lab, and then from that point, we did the lab in June, and then we shot in like late July, mid to late July, sometime like that. And, you know, I think one of the first things I did was I got to call a lot with Sean's real sister, Jennifer. Which was so, I mean, now she's like a big sister to me, but, you know, we would Zoom and I would ask her a lot of questions about like what it was like growing up with eczema, especially during that time. And she would tell me like, I mean, I know it's like so silly because most people don't even realize she has eczema, but it was like so important to me when I was preparing for the
because you research. That's something that I love about your artistry is that you research and you study. Like you studied Sandra, you're doing the eczema, you like, anyways.
Which is funny because I think I've learned that version of it and now I'm like, I don't want to treat the process like being like a student. If that makes sense? Like, because I think sometimes they can make it too cerebral. Where at the end of the day, like people are just people and they're reacting from their gut. So I'm kind of going
kind
back
of like how
and
you're being
forth.
more in touch with your gut.
Yeah,
in this,
exactly.
Era.
Exactly. Yeah. No, for real. Because trying to find that balance. Because I think when I was studying acting as a kid, it was all about gut and just like having fun. And then I think that Harvard is a really like financially super over intellectual place where just like most people don't operate that way like in a day to day, and I don't know. And so I think coming back out of that space, I like the research and really knowing a person, but also I think I want to get to a place where you can just throw a lot of that away, and just really just be that thing and be that person. But anyway, so like I watched all these YouTube videos about like people's eczema flare-ups and what they did, like different home remedies and you know, and Jennifer was telling me like there was a time when you couldn't do that, you know, like there weren't YouTube tutorials and people weren't really posting about eczema, and she was just kind of like putting whatever weird concoction or weird lotion or whatever she could find and just like hoping that it worked. And that really influenced the way that she viewed herself, because it was like when you already don't feel good about your skin and the way that you are appearing to people, you just feel, and it hurts and it's itchy and and when it's hot too, like you're just irritated, like you're simply not the best version of yourself. And that's exactly how you see Vivian in the movie. She's just like not the best version of herself. Like,
and she's a high school senior.
She's a high school senior. She's like off to college. And, I mean, I think her arc is like she goes from that that automatic version of yourself when you're with your family, which is like this gremlin, you know, like you're just like, I hate you, like you pizza face, like blah blah blah, And then eventually she starts dressing a little more mature. That's something I talked a lot with the costume designer, Brianna Murphy, about, which is like, how do we make her a little more mature? And I was just upset. I mean, I was old enough that like I remembered these outfits and I really like I found them so funny and like I really wanted to channel that.
Yeah.
So like one big thing is that I cut my hair for $40 in Chinatown.
Yeah,
like,
girl, you had the side bang layered
So
like
perfect.
crazy. And the scarf, there was like a scarf.
Exactly,
right?
that's exactly what I was about to talk about. It was like the skinny scarf. And Brianna pulled that out. I was like, we have to put that in. And that is what Miss Vivian is wearing the last time we see her. Is this like skinny scarf outfit.
Like, you know, like sleeves. And
Exactly. And that's like her mature look. Like that's her like going off to college. I am kind of passing the torch to my little brother and like hoping that he gets it. Knowing that he's not going to get it and he's going to stumble along the way, but like hoping I've given him just enough to like make it through, you know?
Something that I read that you said was like just that moment when you were reading the script and you read kind of the very like climactic scene between mom and son where she basically says, I can say it, right? Like
You are
she
my
says, You are
dream.
my dream.
Yeah.
And you said that that was like basically verbatim something that your mom has said to you.
Yes, yeah.
Can you tell me more about that within the context of Didi and also like your own life, seeing yourself in that movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that scene just hits really hard. I remember when we shot that on set, and it was really like, that was one of those moments where it's like, this movie is really special.
Yes.
Watching Joan deliver that line and like, you know, in the movie, I think it's so special because, you know, Didi goes up to, or Chris goes up to Chun-Sing and is like, are you disappointed in me? And she's like, how could I be disappointed in you? Like, maybe I have all this version of these other lives I could have lived, but you are my dream. Having you is my dream. And I think that as, you know, a kid of immigrant, and, you know, I think you can relate to this, right? But, like, feeling like you are born to be an extension of your parents.
Yeah.
Like, your existence is a reflection of how good of a person they are. Like...
Or how well they achieved the dream.
Yes.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they've sacrificed so much that you can have the American dream and that your life is so much better than theirs, and then you are able to pay back the favor by, you know, getting them a house and, like,
Having them live with you.
Yeah, having them live with you and, like, all that
Raise
stuff.
your kid, yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's why I put a lot of pressure on myself with my acting career or with school or anything. It's because I had from a young age that awareness that is something that's so important to me and so important to my family. And I think that's also something I've struggled with is like, I don't really understand how you do things for yourself. Yeah. I was like, that's actually the statement.
Yeah.
How do you do things for yourself that make yourself proud when I feel like my whole life I've been doing things to make my parents proud?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it took a lot for me to remember, like, oh, your parents are already proud. Like, you are already your parents' dream. And it was something, that line clicked to me because I was talking with one of our good mutual friend, Molly Peterson.
Yep.
Because she was talking to me and she was saying, like, wow, that is just so amazing that your parents' dream, because so my mom always wanted a daughter because of the one-child policy in China. She could never have a daughter. My dad got a job in America and then finally was able to have a girl. And so...
I didn't know that part.
Oh, really? I thought I'd explain that to you.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
And so for me, like, that is it captures, like, you are my dream.
Yeah.
Literally the fact that I can be born and be in America at all is point blank just a dream of my mom's. She always wanted a daughter, you know? And so I told that to Molly, and Molly was like, wow, like, your existence is their dream. Like, you've already made them proud just by being alive.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I think that was a really special realization to have because I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
You always think you have to do so much more just to make them proud when really, like, just the fact that you're here, you're happy, you're healthy, like, that is enough. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I know your mom, and I can totally attest. Like, she's been proud of you I feel like at all times since I've known her, even like before even watching this movie.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe it's the same thing for her as it is for you, where like everything that you do get is just that cherry on top, but it's not like a prerequisite or a requirement, despite you know, you feeling like there was a lot of pressure on you, like moving to this city at 10 and like your family was involved in that kind of like sacrifice, right? They gave up stuff to make it happen.
Yeah.
But also like that doesn't mean that you need to have, you know, gotten your Oscar by now or gotten in this by now. Like it's all just by being who you are and existing. I feel like there's something so beautiful about that. When you get these scripts, like I feel like you care about what is the purpose, what is the point of this movie, more so than a lot of actors, you know? Yes, the role matters. Yes, like, is it playing a different character or a cool character? Yeah, with an arc, that matters. But I also think that for you, you do care about the context or zooming out about, like, what is it that this is going to do for people? How is this movie going to make people feel? Like, what do you hope people will get from watching DD?
I think... And this is the thing I've been saying that I think is really true is like, I guess a couple of things. One is that I feel like young people right now feel broadly like super hopeless.
Yeah.
It's just like, I realized I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's like, oh, this generation's so like anxious and so depressed. I think it's because we just don't feel like there's a lot of hope.
Yeah.
Because we were living through the pandemic for so long and there was like not really an end point, and then just all these
political unrest, climate,
social media obviously exasperates it, and then like, and then for me the strike, at least in terms of like the industry itself, is like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah.
A lot of young people don't really have hope, and I can't compare it to anything else. But then I think about 08, and I'm like, I feel like people had hope then, right? That was Obama's whole thing.
Yeah.
That was like truly his whole thing. Where like when I was a kid, I felt like, you know, things were really changing for the better.
Yeah, I also remember being in 5th grade and seeing his inauguration and being like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah,
Life
like
is cool.
Like America's great.
Yeah, not knowing a single thing about his policy.
Yeah, right,
you know?
right.
Yeah.
And then knowing nothing but being like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is cool. And I remember too, like, either Malia or I was gonna say Malia or Obama. Malia or Sasha were wearing like this like teal dress.
Yeah.
And my mom had gotten me something similar from it. I was like, oh my gosh, I want the Obamas.
Wow, that's kind of cool. Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, like I just remember like feeling so hopeful, and like these days I just don't think that we generally feel that way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think for a while, in response, a lot of art that was being made was super like in your face, very like making really strong,
pragmatic,
making really strong like statements, and also I think rightfully so, talking about a lot of really heavy history or really heavy dramatic topics that weren't really being discussed, but really I think took a toll on a lot of people. Like, like I think about like, I think like Watchmen was coming out around the same time as like Underground Railroad and like all like, or I just think a lot of people were like, in response to this political time, we have to educate ourselves, and we're educating ourselves through art.
Yeah.
And Handmaid's Tale too is a great example too. Like just like we were like, oh, let's talk about all of this really hard stuff that everyone's going through on like a macro level.
Yeah.
And I think for a while art got really heavy. Now I think young people feel so
heavy,
that it's really nice to be able to have a theatrical experience that is just, it lets you cry those tears that feel good. You know, like, it feels like you're experiencing something that feels bigger than you, like, through watching something that's small. Like, this is an indie project. The performances are really understated, I think. The memories that it evokes and those experiences, those relationships are like a really short period of time. Like, it's just like it's that time in middle school, right? But everybody can relate to it because I think Sean is so hyper-specific about telling a story that is like familiar to him, and that in turn makes it feel familiar to other people. But basically what I'm trying to say is like, you know, it feels important to me because right now you want to watch something that, you know, makes you want to call your parents afterwards, right? Like, that reminds you of, you know, there's all these things to be worried about and stressed about as we're young people becoming adults, but we just kind of want to go back to that time when we're kids. Where, like, the biggest thing we had to worry about was, like, pressing, like, the letter A 4 times to get to, like, the letter you wanted. You know what I mean? Like, and so it makes you laugh, it makes you cry in a way that feels important and special, because it's important and special to you, if that makes sense. And so then the other reason why I feel like it's important is I think a lot about Sean and his artistry. Like, I think that his story is a testament to being yourself and being okay with not knowing who you are. Like, like Chris has no idea who he is, but in that moment, you're seeing him like crystallize those beginning stages of his identity, right?
Yeah.
And I look at Sean, and he's like this. Like, he owns all these parts of his identities. He's, like, a film whiz kid, but he's also, like, an Asian guy. He's also, like, from the Bay.
He's very, like,
skateboarder.
cheerful. Like, more
super
cheerful than you would think from watching the movie.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look at photos from that time, he was, like, he looked like a scene kid. You know, like, he had, like, the full-on, like, side-swept bangs and, like, you know. But I think that presence that he has of being able to make people feel so comfortable around him is because he's, like, really comfortable with all those parts of himself. And, you know, in DD, like, Chris makes a lot of bad choices, and he, like, kind of sucks a lot of the time.
Yeah,
but
yes,
it's like showing those parts and being like, oh, those parts are okay, you know? I always think we need stories that tell that message.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you and I have had like extensive conversations. Like, huge part of our friendship is talking about Asian American Hollywood, Asian representation, etc.
Yeah.
One thing that I really loved, I felt like Didi did really differently, is like not explaining that much. Some people I think may think otherwise, but when I was watching, I was like, oh yeah, it's just a given that the shoes are off. Or we don't have to, like when he says that he claims that he's half Asian, not Asian, without any explanation, you know, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like that. There's something even more relatable or more specific about that, because it's for the people who have been there and have experienced that and have done that. Where I was like, that was a very smart decision.
Yeah. Well, and I think that his story is like, it's Asian American specifically because he wants to he does not want to be Asian American.
Yes.
Like, he so does not want to.
Yeah.
And
Which been there, totally been there.
Yeah, and you know, there's that part where he sits across from Joan's character, and he's like, "Oh, you're so Asian." When she's cutting the hamburger, I feel like that's like a really good example of that too. But I actually think about, so I did a screening in New York with a bunch of my friends, and I had them all do. I wish you could have been there. Yeah,
I wish I was there. I fucking wanted to be in that montage.
Right. Yeah. So I did, like, you know, screening with all my friends. I had them all dressed up as skaters, but the thing that was so funny that people seem to really relate to, regardless of race, was the moment when Chris decides to block.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Block one of his friends. And everyone's like, oh, no. And that, to me, really speaks to, like, the impact of this film, because it's like, yeah, people can relate to that feeling. Feeling like an outsider, feeling like you don't know what to do, feeling like you hate yourself, or feeling like
you'll self-sabotage because you're embarrassed.
Because you're embarrassed, exactly. It's like, oh, don't do that. But, like, I get it, you know? And having that be communicated through something as simple as a click, right? Because we are this generation where we're, like, old enough to have been, or young enough to have been raised with social media for, like, a big part of our lives, but old enough to be able to reflect on it and how it's, like, impacted us in, like, those little micro dynamics where, like, oh, that really hurts.
Yeah.
So that, to me, was like, oh, yeah, this movie is really speaking to a lot of people regardless of race, and because of race, but also regardless of race, because it's just, like, that feeling of not really feeling like you belong, feeling really lost.
Yeah. And because I think that is such a relatable part, is like, you will choose to do something pretty terrible or make a bad choice in response to that feeling of, like, insecurity or embarrassment. Yeah.
You just don't want to deal with it. You're like,
it's
easier if I just, like, ignore this.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, like, what was a part, because you were saying, like, you could relate to a lot of it. Like, what were parts that stuck out to you? How'd you see your sister? How'd you see yourself? Like,
well, I thought the relationship with I even felt like I related to it in ways that, even though it was different from my experience. For example, like, Joan Chen's character, I feel like is in a lot of ways the antithesis of a stereotypical Asian mom. In a lot of ways, I had an Asian mom that was a little bit stereotypical.
Right.
But I felt like seeing that tender, like, even that was validating, to be like, oh yeah, like, she just fucking cares about her son, even though I'm not familiar with, like, having an artist mom and having, like, a mom who, like, kind of doesn't yell, like, you know, like, that. I was just kind of, I guess that's not relatability, but I felt connected to it. But I feel like the part that I felt most connected to Well, I mean, besides like having to go to the tutoring and my tutoring wasn't in a garage, but I can like that shit was funny, you know. I feel like maybe it was the arc with the love interest.
Yeah.
And like really wanting to impress someone.
Asian.
And actually, now that I say that, also just impress the friends. Like it's not it's not necessarily a love story. It's more so about just like what he's experiencing with his love interest is also what he's experiencing with his friends. I feel like where he's kind of like trying to ditch some of his friends in order to get in with this cooler like white skate group. And I didn't have that, similar to how I didn't have like a really, really, really calm Asian mom. But it was like, yes, like that's how it felt though. Like it felt like I really wanted to do whatever I could to fit in, even if that's not exactly what deep down I really wanted.
Yeah.
Like if I could go back in time and tell my young kid self, he'd be like, yeah, no, I don't fucking care if like about those people, but this is what I'm told like I have to or I have to try to assimilate to or try to fit in with is this, so I'm gonna do that. And like that discomfort with how I actually feel versus what I think I have to feel, like that's where the messiness and the chaos comes. And the sister and brother, I mean, just to like reiterate it again, like I do feel like there was this time where I can even remember when my sister and my relationship got better. And it was kind of after she went off to college. And it was like when we kind of see each other as real people, because it's really easy to just be like such a dick to your sibling when you're living with them and you see them just as like another nuisance and not realizing that like a lot of the pain that you're inflicting on the other person is just like projection. And if you had just like sat down and talked about it, you know, that kind of thing.
I think for me, like, you know, my brother was super nice to me growing up. I did not.
No, people literally was like, why was Vivian so out of line? And I was like, I've seen that. What are you talking about?
What do you mean? Oh, like your sister.
Like I've been like my sister has done that.
It's funny because I think you either get it or you don't.
Yeah.
Like you either had a sibling relationship like that and you feel very, very seen by it, or you're like, oh, they're so mean to each other. Yeah. But I think for me, something that, you know, Sean and I talked a lot about was like, how do you express I love you when the only words you've ever had is I hate you or some form of that word, right? Like you tell them you love them by like saying like, oh, you look fucking ugly and stupid and all this stuff, right? And that's just like the way that they're used to talking to each other. In terms of what you're saying about like you didn't have those exact relationships or experience or those specific wants, but you knew what that felt like. I think that's like the entire thing of what this movie is about, right? Is like everybody, I think Sean has said it this way, like the circumstances of being 13 is constantly changing, but the feelings that you have is like basically always the same, right? Yeah. And so like, how do you capture that awkwardness and that like, like feeling like you're being pulled in a million different directions? Yeah. I think that's really what we want to try to go for. I feel like that's what I'm trying to say is like just the tale as old as time, just like the universality and the specificity I feel like is exactly what this movie is. Yes. Is like, it's not like, oh, we can all relate to it because it doesn't say much or it's general. It actually is like a very like, this is his world and his experience. Like there's a lot that I did not do. I'm not straight. I wasn't skating. I wasn't like a SoCal Asian. Like, but like it still captures that feeling of awkwardness and feeling like the world is against you and like there's nothing you can do about it and just wanting it to all like explode and escape and run away and that kind of thing. I'm so excited for the world to see you and the movie. Like I feel like this is the perfect kind of project that it could be for more and more people to know you. Yeah, it's so funny because like after DIDI, people have been like, oh, you know, we've seen you in DIDI, and like, I'm getting told that people have seen me as like this really spunky character. Like, yeah, it's so funny. You're a nerdy, spunky loser with edge. Like I saw my sister, like with the music and the emo-ness. Like that is not something that you actually see in this
generation, like that specific flavor of teenager is different.
That is very true. I mean, I don't feel like, at least we see as many 13-year-olds kind of like stumbling through being themselves and being like, oh, I hate you. Like, because now it's so polished, the way that I think young people like are learning how to present themselves because of social media. But back then it's like so unpolished and raw and unfiltered, and that's just who she was. And, you know, I would say that like in my head I was doing Lady Bird. Like in my head, you know, Vivian it's like that same arc of like she's about to go off to college. She doesn't get along with her mom. She doesn't get along with her family. Like, it's sort of that version of a coming of age, at least in Vivian's head, right? And so, but yeah, since then, it's funny because people have been telling me, you know, as I've gone out for other projects or started working on other things, they'll be like, oh, you know, you're always playing these characters that are so confident, like so, or rageful, or like have this like...
Rageful, I see.
yeah, like this like...
darkness.
Yeah, darkness, or like this intensity to them. And it's so funny because I've never viewed myself that way. Like, but then I guess if you line them all up, like if you line up Beast, if you line up, you know, Quiz Lady, where she's sort of like super like out there and
defiant.
Very much like a rebel and very confident, fashion forward. And then you have, and then you put Vivian. It's like, yeah, I guess so. But for me, that's because I think I have always wanted to be someone who's like very transformative. And it's like weird now to be having collected enough things where people can look at a career and be like, oh, here are several things that we like you in, and this is the pattern that we see is so weird to me, because like that's not necessarily how I view myself. And I think the energy that I bring when I'm on set or in a room is very different. It's like a lot more playful, but I think it's honestly like a really huge honor that people are seeing things of mine and like saying that about it.
Did you miss me? Just kidding. I feel like one of the coolest parts of acting is that transformation, getting to be character A versus character Z, especially being an Asian, where there's so many stereotypes, whether it's submissive or nerdy or undesirable, that's where the transformation for me is very exciting from a conceptual and from a practical standpoint of like, I just want to be not what people think I am. And that fine line is tricky because at least when I was going up acting and doing auditions for really stupid things, it was like, but at the end of the day, the best acting is not acting and being exactly who you are. People create based on exactly who they are, their authentic selves. They're just like the person that you literally physically see, and being able to hold that with, but I want to be so many other things, so many things that would go against how people would label me. Like finding those two things and putting it together, I found is like a pretty hard thing to do. This love for transforming is something that I want in my actual life. I don't only want to play a different character. I don't only want to be seen in different ways, but I literally want to be many different things. I want to have different careers. I want to try different things, try different hobbies, have a different job, have different eras. I'm a big eras guy. And to move on from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, because for me, something that's so important for me in my life as I look back is that, I got to do so many different things. I got to literally be so many people, kind of like playing multiple different characters, but actually knowing what it's like, I think is such a strong appeal of being an actor and being a creative in general. And for this podcast, I want to know what it's like. Tell me what it's like. Show me, tell me what your experience is like. Let me be there and let me kind of live vicariously. I feel like there's something really cool about that, especially when you're in your 20s and you kind of have to choose what it is or who you are right now. You don't need to commit everything or make every decision about who you are down the line, but you do kind of need to choose a job today for this time. Did I just pop off?
To then have like Slanted come after that, I'm excited to see what people will say about it. I don't know.
Because what are you serving in Slanted, and like what's like the main takeaway now that you've literally just finished filming it?
I think it was super cool. It was a really fun process, like getting to work with like McKenna Grace and Maitreyi and Amelie, and like and definitely working with our director Amy Wong. She is so just like such a force. Like she is so funny and charismatic on set, but also she wrote Crazy Rich Asians 2, and then also Brother's Son, an episode of Brother's Son, and like seeing her balance that professionalism that I think you get from like the grind of TV specifically, like that just like, oh, boom, boom, we're getting this done, but also carry this levity and be able to kind of break down like a barrier with anybody. It was like really, really cool and really special. So that's like definitely something I'm taking away from that process. But, you know, like I think that version is also, it's a quote unquote Asian American story, but it's like that kernel of like, if you let that self-hating voice kind of really propagate and like really take hold, like what it looks like, and like
yeah, because literally what happens in the movie.
Yeah, she gets surgery to become white. I know, and it's like crazy because it sounds like a huge spoiler, but it's literally in the Deadline arc. We're not spoiling anything. And it definitely feels weird to inhabit that, because it's like, do I want to encourage that in people? But at the same time, it's like, well, that is a voice that is really real and is still real. And as much as people now, you know, view me as like somebody who's very confident, or like, you know, I studied Asian American studies, like, whatever. Like at the same time, I was still like this girl growing up in Washington State and like wanting to be loved or viewed as pretty or like whatever. And so it's funny because there is that voice that you kind of hate that you have and that exists and you're aware shouldn't, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And this is one version of, you know, answering a question of like, well, what do you do with that voice, you know? So I think it's cool. I don't think we've seen a project like that come from the Asian American community where it's like satirical, it kind of pushes boundaries. It's not, because DIDI makes you feel good. I would not say that, you know, Slanted is, you're going to go into it and be like, oh, this is like a feel-good coming-of-age story. Like, that's not what it's.
So it's not just like a funny movie.
It has really funny elements.
Yeah.
It has really dark elements.
Huh.
It is truly a ride, I think. I mean, I don't know how it's going to cut together, but, like, I think what's exciting is that I think as, you know, Asian American, in this moment of Asian American entertainment, I feel like we've had so many successes commercially, right?
Yeah.
Like Everything Everywhere, like all that stuff. Everything Everywhere really pushes the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But it's like we haven't really had something that's like, oh, like this is someone who really hates being Asian American.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the Asian movies that have low-key kind of it's like it just didn't. It felt like it was like going in between, like wanting to appeal to a wide audience and being Asian enough, instead of just give it to me, like show me all the
like the ugliness.
Yeah, the ugliness.
Yeah, like this movie, I feel like bears that ugliness, you know, and like it's not something to celebrate. In this case, it's not something we're celebrating being Asian American, and I think we're so lucky, and I'm so happy that we have enough films coming out where this isn't the message,
right.
You know, the singular message and the singular experience about being Asian American, but we get to have a version of that story that's like very that tests the boundaries, that makes you feel a little uncomfortable. And I just don't think we have a movie yet that's like that quite yet. You know, we have a lot of feel-good stuff, which is really great, but I'm excited to see people respond to this one.
So do you think it'll be controversial?
I don't know. I don't know. I would not. I feel like I'm very much not someone who's gonna like try to predict how anyone's gonna respond to anything.
Yeah.
Even with DIDI, it was like, I'm just gonna make something that I care about.
Yeah.
And the positive response has been like super overwhelming. But, you know, I just would have never predicted that or expected that. So, you know, with Slanted, you know, I have no clue. But I think that people will really respect the fact that it tries to do something super, super different. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, do we know where it's going to be? Like, that's to come later?
That's to come later, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll interview you again when that happens. Thank you so much, Shirley. Was there anything that we didn't, like, I don't know, talk about?
I don't know. I feel like this honestly just feels like when we just hang out and then we because I feel like I've just given you like a big comprehensive like response to everything, but somehow I feel like we've talked a lot, and also there's still more things to talk about.
There's so much, yeah. I agree. Well, I'm excited for that to be next, and thanks again, Shirley. Y'all, I hope that kind of flew by for y'all, because it flew by for me. there's so much more that I want to talk about with Shirley, and I love that we were just kind of starting to get into the territory of Asian American Hollywood, Asian American representation in the media and in movies and in films right now. I think something that people always say about Asian American representation in movies and films is that it's like either like you get people being like, oh, like this is the authentic Asian experience, but then even more so you're getting so many people being like, this is not a story that's just for Asians. This is a story about a person. And it just so happens that they're Asian. And with DIDI, I feel like it does just the right amount of both. I know that's kind of like a cop-out thing to say, but like I really do think that like if I were a white person, would I like this movie? I think I would like this movie. I think that there would be interesting aspects of a familiar story that maybe are foreign to me but make it exciting to watch, which is where, you know, some of the comedy comes in. And then for someone who is in my position, who this movie kind of is for, it's like even on the flip side, even when there are some parts of it that are different that also seem kind of foreign and don't exactly replicate my own life, it's like I can appreciate that and I want to like kind of like see what that's like. So how cool is it that we get to see it in front of our eyes? And so yeah, I think this podcast is brought to you by DIDI unofficially. They did not sponsor this, whatever, but watch DIDI, go support it, use those dollars in this capitalist era. Overall, my main takeaway from talking with Shirley is to just blow up expectation. Like, when you blow up expectation or blow up that image of yourself that you were so fixated on, you're able to actually just do the damn thing and to do the work. And to also know if that work is fulfilling you. When you're too... We all know, like, oh, if you have too much tunnel vision, like, you lose track, you don't know what's in front of you, whatever. But honestly, like, though an unproductive thing that you could do is have tunnel vision on something that you then realize, like, years and years and years down the line, like, wasn't actually something that you wanted, which requires you to be, you know, present-minded, I guess, which is, hate being present, but it's something that I'm working on. I'm not naturally good at it, but it's something that I'm working on, being present. But... yeah, like, I kind of love that coincidentally when she went from, I need to be a famous actress, or I want to be a famous actress, to, I'll just see where my career takes me and just keep doing it to the extent that I'm enjoying it. When she established more of a relaxed and almost lower stakes kind of mentality, that's when a lot of things started working for her. It's like adjusting the expectations and with that the circumstances and the external validation like popping off. But yeah, I'm walking away from this room being like, you know what? Leave the expectations. For this podcast, leave the expectations. Just do it. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it. I hope you enjoyed yourself too. Come back if you enjoyed yourself. Come back if you didn't enjoy yourself. Give me another try, okay? For our next episode, I'm really excited to bring a different flavor on this podcast, just to give you a little bit of, we gave you some of the, you know, like the creative and the artist. Now we're going to go take a right turn to psychologists, mental health, getting into your 20s, how to deal with anxiety, why Gen Z is floundering, with some actual solutions and practical suggestions, okay? So next I interviewed Dr. Charlina Arellano, who is a psychotherapist with 30 years of experience and a life coach, a certified life coach, not one of those flops or fakes. And I'm really excited to introduce you guys to her. I think she's honestly going to give you guys takeaways. For me, my big thing is that it shaved off like 5 years of floundering and being confused and being like stuck in my life. And I hope it does the same for you. So yeah. This is No So True. Please subscribe. Please follow. Please do any of those things. I'm not even going to be like, oh yeah, if you want to, no, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. Yeah, I hope this grows. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys want to stay for the ride and be some fellow Zelenies figuring it out. Thanks for listening. And now cue the music. Bum, 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 bum.